Hello and welcome. Mantras, so if you know them, feel free to chant along, and otherwise just close your eyes and listen. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Harihi Om Antva Ganapatigam Havamahe Kavim Kavinamupamashravastamam Jyeshtarajam Brahmanaspata Ana Shrinvannotibhisida Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Ano Devi Saraswati Vajebhirvajanivati Dhinamavitriyavatu Ano Divo Brahataf Parvatada Saraswati Ajatagantu Yanyam Havan Devi Jujushana Gritachi Shagman Novachamushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om and welcome. I'm happy to get to speak with you today about Jyotish and my work in origin stories, working with ancestry and Vedic astrology. So just a brief introduction of who I am. I'm Allison Dennis. I am a Vedic astrologer and a musician. I came to the Vedic path by way of an injury, actually, 25 years ago. There was a herniated disc in my lower back, and I was quite young and quite afraid and immobile, and began to seek out avenues for calming my mind, for getting okay with my, my predicament, my state. And I read all sorts of books, but I stumbled on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and it really became, and still is, a beacon of light for me around this sort of agency. It inspires agency around how to accept and work with your reality, how to calm the mind, how to understand the constructs of the mind, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the talk. And I just find Patanjali's Yoga Sutras to be absolutely fascinating. So I would say the bedrock, the foundation of my work has been Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and Patanjali meditation, and doing my best to understand psychology from a Vedic perspective. I have a rich history in the performing arts, so that is how the music, Indian music, stuck, because I have a love for Western music. And I met my guru, K. Sridhar, in 2010. He is perhaps the top sarod player alive right now. He is he's an old school teacher, South Indian teacher, in that he can teach anybody any instrument. He teaches from the basic methodology of raga music and shrutis, the microtones. So I'm so grateful to him for his ongoing inspiration in my life and the way he has really guided me into what it is that I do now. It was by his request that I studied Jyotish and also to study Indian music. And so my foundation is Patanjali Sutras. I am a Vedic astrologer, and I also work with Indian music. What I want to talk to you today about is really to just give a brief introduction on what is Vedic astrology, what is Jyotisha, how is it, how can it be helpful to us in the context of working with our mind, our karmic patterns, and our inherited family history, the ancestry that we are born into. So to begin, let me just tease apart some definitions and speak to Jyotisha. So Jyoti means light, Ish means science. So Jyotisha is the science of light. It is one of the Vedangas, so one of the limbs, Anga, limb of the Vedas, and Veda being knowledge, the universal knowledge. And it serves as the eyes of the Vedas. So it's how the Vedas can see. It is there are a variety of ways to work with Jyotisha. The way that I'm talking about and the way that I work with in origin stories around family patterns and ancestry is through the birth chart, through Hora. And what a birth chart does is it's essentially by way of having your birth time, and the exact time matters, the minute matters very much. The place of your birth and the day of your birth, that with that information, I can plug that into my software. Thinking of Jyotishas not very long ago who had to do all of the math themselves. So those of us these days, we have many shortcuts by way of technology. So I plug that information into my software, and it gives me a picture. It's basically a map. And that map, it shows where all of the planets were when you were born. It shows what constellation was rising in the horizon when you were born. It shows what constellation was descending in the horizon when you were born. It shows what constellations, whether it was day or night, what constellations were in the seen part of the sky and what was underneath. And through many years of study, Jyotishi will come to understand what the relationships between different patterns, different planets mean. They'll come to understand different yogas or configurations that show a certain amount of rise for the person. And it's essentially a map, a karmic map. And it's, the sky itself, the planets, it is like a clock, right? So when you're born, it's like the clock stops. We take a photograph, the karmic map of the kind of destiny patterns that you're born into, the kind of work that you're here to do. We can see vasana through the birth chart. And vasana is a Patanjali Yoga Sutra term. Vasana means a collection of karmas and samskaras. Karma is action. So, what every action has, there's a cause and an effect. And so we're born into this life and we carry with us the karma of our predecessor. We carry with us the karma of our ancestors, and we sort of come into this life with a certain inclination or disposition to work through some challenging parts so that we have the potential through agency to become healers of patterns that have been going on for a long time. And we come in with a certain set of gifts as well, a certain set of strengths also. So a vasana is a collection of those karmas, and then also samskaras. So a samskara is like a groove, a deep mental groove. It is seen by way of our natural tendencies, our natural disposition, our habitual way, your habits, your addictions, your practices. All of this is samskara. So when we're looking at a birth chart, we're seeing vasana. We're seeing those collections of karmas and samskaras. You know, Jyotish at its aim, it's a clock that helps us to see what's happening right now so that we can, to the best of our ability, address the future and address the past. Part of what I love so much about Jyotisha and Vedic astrology is that it is by way of Patanjali Sutras and Jyotisha, this really is the crux of Vedic psychology. And I love all psychology. I love Western psychology. I am a fan of getting inspired and getting enthusiasm behind how to work with what it is that's happening right now, how to develop and build contentment with what it is that's happening right now, how to utilize the amount of free will and agency I have to change what it is that I can change, but accept what it is that I have no control over. So what distinguishes Vedic psychology from Western psychology, aside from longevity? Western psychology has been around 200 years, maybe 300. And, you know, Jyotisha, Vedic psychology, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras for thousands of years. And part of what is distinctly different about both is that Vedic psychology aims to place you inside of a universal paradigm. So the aim is to understand the environment, to understand reality as it is, and then come into a better understanding of your own self and your own patterns so that you can fit well into the bigger picture. And there's another term, which may be familiar to some of you, antakarana. So antakarana is the instruments of the mind. They are the instruments of the mind. And these instruments of the mind can be seen through the birth chart. So in terms of origin stories, the work that I do with ancestry and family patterns, the first thing I do is get the chart set up. And then the next thing I do is start to look at you and your mind by way of antakarana. So there are, it's quite intriguing, I think, to tease apart the constructs of the mind and look at them as unique individual expressions of self, even though in reality it's all happening very quickly. So I'll just do a tiny little explanation of these different aspects of mind. So let's start with ahamkara. So ahamkara is the ego. It translates as I am the doer. So ahamkara is that sense that you have in yourself that you are you, and you are separate from me, and you are separate from everything, and you have sort of created this concretized identity, sense of self. You feel separate from what it is you are working with or looking at, that deep sense of identity is your ahamkara, your ego. So there's a way that by way of looking at the birth chart, we can see a person's ego. We can see the sense of self. And that can give a lot of information to me about how to work with somebody, because an ego could be very strong. It could be very strong and very durable and really stable. And the kind of person who has they have such a strong sense of self that it's very easy for them to exert their will into the world. It's very easy for them to proclaim themselves into the world and to get traction into their action, right? If there's a strong ego, sometimes it can play out that way. Sometimes, though, there can be a strong ego that has some inflammation going on or some kind of a bloatedness going on. So then it's going to be a strong ego that maybe has a hard time not understanding why everything isn't going their way exactly how they want it to go, and it actually becomes kind of challenging. The strong ego becomes a detriment instead of enhancing the life. So there's a lot of nuance to reading a birth chart and to seeing a person's ego, right? So then there is also, so that's ahamkara, the ego. Then there is also the manas, and I would say the manas is where the bulk of my work is, because I do work with music and the manas and the ways that music can address the emotional mind and heal the subtle self and the emotional self. So that is the manas. Manas is the emotional mind, the soft, warm animal of you. Totally different than that ego sense, right? That ego sense is like, I'm me, here's what I like, here's who I am. And I guess, let me back up just a little bit around and say just one more thing about the ego before I get too deep into manas. Because I was speaking about a strong ego, but you could also see a weak ego. You could see the way that a person's ego is, if it's weak, they can have a challenging time identifying with anything. There can be difficulty knowing where they want to go, what they want to do. There can be, if the ego is weak, it is more challenging to exert their will into the world and get traction by way of their action. So somebody with a weak ego, sometimes it's a needing to boost the ego in a little bit. Somebody with a strong ego, it might be like not trying to enhance that piece, right? So ego is ego, right? So I think we painted a mini picture for you about what ahamkara is, what the ego is. So now let's redirect into manas, the emotional body, the emotional self, the emotional mind. The manas is it's the part of you that is perceiving by way of the senses. So it's the manas that loves the taste of what you love the taste of. It's the manas that loves to see nature in its splendor, in its glory. It's the manas that loves the delightful smells, right? So the way you pull the world in and come to know your reality through the senses, that's all manasic. That's all the manas. Manas is the inner sensations. It's how you measure things. The manas is how you know you're hungry. The manas is how you know you're full. The manas is the subtle material of emotions, how you feel about what's going on in your reality, right? So the manas is very interesting and there is a way that we can look to the birth chart to get information about how a person is feeling, or how they generally feel about their world and their reality. The moon is a major indicator of a person's manasic structure. The moon will be in a certain nakshatra, and that nakshatra, which is the micro zodiac. So in Jyotish, we work with the 12 constellations that are well known in Western astrology, but we work with a more specific zodiac. It's the same stars, but we just work with a deeper specificity. So we work with 27 nakshatras, and where the moon is by way of nakshatra placement can give me a tremendous amount of information about how that person processes their reality, right? So they're pulling everything in through the senses, right? And the senses like this and don't like that, right? So all that information, all that sensory information is coming into the person. And then by way of knowing where the moon is, that gives information of, do they process things quickly? Do they process things slowly? Are they the kind of person that's always trying to improve things? Or is it a perfectionistic person? So everything comes in and then they try to fix it and organize it and beautify it. Are they the kind of person that things come in and they immediately go into the state of, how can I heal? How can I help? How can I nurture? Right? Are they the kind of person that it comes in and all the information that's moving in, it's the development of meaning and mysticism and development of the inner self, that they pull all the information in through the senses, and it becomes an enhancement to their spiritual life. So the moon can give a lot of information about a person's the way they're processing the reality, the way they feel about how their life is going, the way they process their traumas. All of this can be seen in the birth chart with some kind of spooky accuracy, actually. It's really fascinating stuff. And there's more. There's more. It's not just the moon. There are other tools that I will go to help me understand a person's manas. So the manas is also, it means to measure. So there is a lot here around arranging things in the mind, measuring things. It's the manas that if we feel emotionally overwhelmed, that's the manas. Or if we use strategies of numbing out, that's going to be seen through the manas. So I hope that is creating a brief picture about what the manas is. Let's shift to talk about then the buddhi. So still talking about antakarana, the instruments of the mind, teasing those apart a bit. So the buddhi is the intellect. It's the deciding part of the mind. It's the ethical part of the mind, the moral part of the mind, the part of the mind that all that, you've got that ego, that solid structure of here's me, here's who I am. And then your manas is reaching out into the world through the senses and collecting information. It's the buddhi that then takes that manasic information and decides what to do about it. So you could have a weak ego, but a strong buddhi, right? So the ego could be weak and you could have a hard time exerting your will into the world, but the buddhi is strong and stable. And so you work through it, and perhaps you have a manas that's really nurturing. And so you work through the challenges of life, and you're able to, in some way, exert your will on the world, even though there might be some, if there is a weak ego, there's some sense of, oh, I'm not enough, I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough, right? Conversely, you could have a very strong ego, really strong capacity to exert your will into the world, but the buddhi could be afflicted in some way. The intellect could be afflicted. So even though there's this strong sense of self and a capacity to exert yourself, if the buddhi is not functioning well, if the buddhi is weak, then it's like you're taking all the information in, but the buddhi isn't, it's indecisive, or it's full of doubt, or it just feels compromised in some way. There's like a feeling of not being quite sure about which way to go or what move to make. The Bud means to awaken, to wake up. So the buddhi is it categorizes what's been perceived, and then it decides what to do about what it has experienced. And then the final aspect of the antakarana is the chitta, and the chitta is the milieu through which all the contents of the mind are moving through this sort of subconscious milieu that we call the chitta. So I hope that makes some sense. And what we do in origin stories is that's the starting point. So I will open up the birth chart. I study for about an hour before every session. And origin stories includes 4 private sessions and some pre-recorded materials as well. And so the first time we meet, I will have already spent some time studying your chart and focusing on exactly this. So I will have done a study of what's the ahamkara like, what's the manas like, and what's the buddhi like for this person that I'm going to speak with. Because those features in the chart they give an indication of a certain vasana, a certain karmic disposition, a certain pattern that, that's how you're going to act in the world, is based on who you think you are, how you feel about what's happening, and what you're going to decide to do, right? So much. It's so much. And we actually do have some free will and some agency inside of all that automatic movement that goes on in the mind. So that's the beginning of origin stories, is just helping to orient you around how your mind is working. There are requests for you to pay attention to, week by week. First week, pay attention to the ego. Just notice that solid sense of self that you have about yourself, and ask yourself, is it true, this thing that I think of myself? If there is a recurring thought pattern. So for example, if you had a weak ego and you often have the thought vibrating in the mind of, I'm not enough, I'm not doing enough, it's not enough, that through origin stories, there's the potential there to pay attention to those thought patterns and look at them and question them and ask if it's true, and then redirect them, move them in another direction. So, first week you'll pay attention to the ego, and a few weeks later you pay attention to the manas for a couple weeks, then you pay attention to the buddhi for a couple weeks, and just developing a relationship with the antakarana, with the different instruments of the mind. Then what we do, so first session is really helping you to understand you, right? And then we start to take the chart, and it's really beautiful. There's a way that through the birth chart we can see your mom, right? There's a way I'm not get into the technicalities here, but there's a way I can have a conversation about your mom and what her manas might be like, what her ego might be like, what her buddhi might be like. We can see the way that the patterns that are running through you, and this is just through your birth chart. We don't need mom's birth chart or dad's birth chart. Just through you, we can see the sort of pattern that has come through mom and been given to you, inherited by you. It's playing out in you in a certain way, but it belonged to her first, and it played out through her in some way. So we have conversations about mom and what it was like for her to move through life. And it gives a sort of compassion in us to think of mom, think of dad in this way, as moving through the same patterns that we have, but completely different, in a different arena of life. We can take it from mom and we can look at mom's mom just through your birth chart and talk about her and her experience and her life and her disposition and her manas and what things might have been like for her. And then we can look at great grandma, right? So we can just take the whole maternal line and talk about mom and maternal line. And so that's the second session. We really focus in on mom, maternal line, the manas, the feeling self, you know, what you were born into in terms of thought pattern structure. And then I'll suggest that you focus on meditating on the manas for a couple of weeks, just noticing it, you know, as you go through your days. Notice how you're processing something that happens. Notice your knee-jerk reactions. That's all manas. Our quick trigger, our quickly triggered reactions. Where and you know, some people will be quickly triggered and then they react really quickly, right? And then some people are triggered quickly, but then they retreat, they withdraw. So there'll be different ways, different patterns that show in the birth chart. And so we'll talk about that and help you understand the pattern from an ancestral point of view in the way that, you know, you think you're this solid thing. You think it's you. We think it's me. And here's what I'm doing and here's what I'm about. So this origin stories is trying to help you click out of that individual picture and realize that you are a pattern. You are a momentum of patterns. Mom and dad had a child, and that child was born with their patterns, right? And then you're raised, and then, you know, other influences, but that genetic code is in you for you to heal and to prosper from, right? So in origin stories, we do talk about the generational patterns that are living inside of us that are worthy of breaking. The ones where it's like, wow, this has gone on long enough, and I can feel how it is time for this one to end. And so we talk in origin stories, there are conversations about how to break patterns, how to move forward from the certain pattern. And you know, I'll help you see, is it more in the manas? Is it more in the ego? Is it more in the buddhi structure? You know, where is it happening in life? And how can you address this to the best of your ability? And how can you have a lot of compassion for those who came before you for doing the best that they could, right? Also seen, though, are, and this one is always interesting to me in looking at the strengths and the gifts that are there for each of us in the birth chart. And this one is often the one that is harder for people to really digest or really to hear, because I'll see something and say, oh, wow, I bet it's very easy. You know, there's some ease for you around just feeling supported by life. Like you just make the right decisions, and they'll say, yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's always been that way. And then they'll go back into the negative story. So I will do some work to try to help people come back around to, yeah, but that stability that you have is also a gift from ancestry. So we want to really honor the gifts that we have as well, and be so grateful for the work that they did to be able to give us the patterns that allow us to flourish and prosper. The third session of origin stories, we go into the paternal line. So there is a way that through the astrology, I can just look at dad and what his experience, what his manas could be like, what his ego could be like. And then we'll take the patterns that we talked about for you, but talk about it for dad and the way it was playing out for him. And then we can go through the paternal line and talk about dad's dad, dad's dad. And, it's usually around in the third session where we start to, I'll say little pieces about maybe mom's dad or about dad's mom, and start to spin the wheel of family dynamics and ancestry a little bit more in the third session. And then in the fourth session of Origin Stories, I will teach you a really simple and very profound meditation that helps you to access a quiet place inside that you can access even in the midst of a trigger, in a triggered moment, that you could pull back from the trigger. If you can catch it, you can pull back from the trigger, organize your breath, slow everything down, and just experience and observe the way that the ahamkara, the ego, the manas, the emotional mind, and the buddhi, the intellect, are interplaying around this particular trigger. And you sort of hold it loosely and lightly, and you just allow it to exist. And through that allowing the trigger to exist, a kind of softening and a dissolution happens. So we do that practice together in the fourth session. And then I also will teach you a continued meditation that's an ancestor meditation, which really invites in the ancestors to support you, and asking the ancestors to, we will be doing these sessions through Pitru Paksha, which is the ancestor fortnight. And it will also be eclipse season. So there's a way that the veil is thin in September and October when the sessions happen. So I'll teach you this ancestor meditation, and we'll have a group class for the meditation as well. And just to show our reverence for where we come from, to let our ancestors know that we're here, we're paying attention, we're listening for signs from them to aid us and help us to heal whatever generational wounds we're here to heal, and to uplift and bring to the surface what it is that, the gifts that we've been given. Origin Stories is ultimately it's a reminder that that you're part of something. You're part of something very, very old that's been going on a very long time. And to think of your life as a series of patterns, to really look at the pattern, and instead of just being caught in, caught in the flow of it all. Origin Stories is an opportunity to just pause the flow for a moment and really look at, what am I playing out here? And what do I want to continue to play out? And in what way do I want to play it out? And what are the flows, the patterns that are playing out in me, that it's time for those to stop? It's time for me to be the one to break this particular cycle. So it's a reminder that you're part of something. You can go to AllisonDennis.com if you want to just check out a little bit more about origin stories, I do have on my website a one-on-one page, and you can schedule a free call with me if you just want to chat a little bit about it before you sign up. You can sign up now. I've extended the early special for another week because I was doing this talk. So if you want to sign up in the next week, that early special is still there for you. Like I said, it's 4 sessions, so you can just message me directly and I can help you get set up with it. Or you can just go on the website and go to the one-on-one page, and you essentially pay for the entire program, but just schedule the first session, and then we'll schedule the following sessions as we go along. And all of the sessions will happen between September and October, although I can make some exceptions. Some people needed to start a little bit earlier, so that's fine if you need to. Yeah, I'm just I'm grateful to Dave for this invitation to get to speak with you all about Jyotish and Vedic astrology. And perhaps I will close with a mantra right now, and then we can stick around if there are some questions. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. And happy to take any questions if there are any. I guess you can just put them into the chat. And if there are no questions, oh, here's something. It says, thank you for beautiful and insight session, Allison. I'm curious, have you seen a moment in your own life or with a student where understanding family karma created a big breakthrough? Yes, I've seen it multiple times, and certainly for my own self. And sometimes it's really subtle. Sometimes it'll be through something that I see in their manas, but then I see a way that it plays out in mom's health, and they put it together, and there's a tremendous amount of compassion for mom and her health problems and the way that's connected to their own way of relating to the world. I've also seen breakthroughs the other way, where I've seen a real beautiful gift that someone has, and I'll speak to that gift, and they'll sort of go, yeah, it's always been that way, and keep glossing over the gift. And so I'll keep coming back to it again and again to help them understand, no, it's not like that for everyone. You have this special thing that not everybody has, and this is an ancestral gift. And to see them finally go, oh yeah, oh my goodness, of course this is a gift. Of course I should be grateful that I have this because of those who came before me. So and sometimes the breakthroughs happen through the conversations. The sessions are quite conversational. I will we'll speak to the patterns that I see, and I can certainly talk the whole time, but usually it stirs the pot. Origin story stirs the pot, and in the stirring of the pot, it brings up memories in you, or it brings up insight in you, or it brings up a recognition of, oh my gosh, I'm playing out this pattern completely that my mom and my dad played out. And now I'm doing it too. And I don't want to do this. And now I want to be the one to stop this and to do it in a new way. And how am I going to do that? Right. So I hope that answers it. And then another question, how can I tell if a challenge in my life is truly ancestral or more from my own choices and patterns? Yeah, I think there's a mix. I think there's a way that it is a mix. Typically, though, the ancestral patterns are going to be seen as what I was describing as vasana. So I'll look at the chart, and based on relationship between planets, based on yogas, based on, there's quite a bit of assessment that I'll do on the chart that will give me a sense of like, wow, there's a lot of focus in this area of the chart and that area of the chart. Sometimes it's just one area, sometimes it's two, sometimes it's splayed out, and there's, a lot more complex or more complicated. So it's those pieces that I focus in on as the ancestral parts, the parts that look like vasana. They look like a collection of karmas, a lot of focus pouring into one area of life or two areas of life. And I think also the other way to know that it's more ancestral is the karmic disposition of your antakarana, of the instruments of the mind, is going to be set in at a very young age. I mean, and you change and things change, but there's some part of us that gets baked in, really young, and that's the piece that can be seen as ancestry. There are other tools that I use as well that I'm just not going into because it can get a little more complicated to chat about, but you may be familiar with the dasha system of Vedic astrology. So I rely pretty heavily on that as well, and not just what dasha you're in right now, the time phase that you're in, what karma is right now. But I'll go and I'll look at you when you were born, and what was the karma that was unfolding for you as a baby. So that's part of the study, and that'll give me information about which patterns are more ancestral and more to focus in on in the context of origin stories. I hope that gets it. Any other questions? Okay, well, I am grateful for this opportunity to get to speak with you all. And it looks like there might be a chat. Oh. No, I think we got it. Okay, well, many blessings. Thanks for your time, and I hope to get to chat with you about origin stories. Again, you can just go to AllisonDennis.com and check out origin stories there. And I'm Om Blue Sky on social media. Om.